Today's video is going to be a little different than the past several in that I'm actually going to show you my first book. Since spring is coming here in Tennessee, I thought that it would be a great time to share this work that means a lot to me, that I've learned a lot through this experience, that really made me appreciate and love photo books. And also, I have several of these copies left. And so if you would like a copy, then my web address is below. Just jump on my shop. I actually have a sale going on for the month of April 2023. So if this is something you're interested in, then I'd love for you to grab a copy. Okay, so let's look at this book. This is called The 13th Spring. If you see on the cover here, there is a cicada kind of embossed in. And I wanted the book to be really quiet and subtle. I wanted the cover to be really quiet and tender and subtle because the work is very tender and intimate. Maybe not at first glance, but I think if you spend time with the work, then you'll see that. So we get into the book. There is a short poem that I wrote. I just spoke to my students about artist statements, and there's definitely many approaches to making an artist statement. But often when I'm making a body of work, I find that I need to just hint at where the work is going and not be so obvious or overt necessarily. I really want to set the context and the mood of the work that you're going to see. So oftentimes I'll write a poem or a short story or something like that. As we come into this world, we enter into this kind of mysterious, foggy, watery area. And this was the first time I really, I think, embraced using metaphor and working through that, even though these pictures were made in a documentary mode. At the time, I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. My wife and I had gotten pregnant with our first daughter, and we weren't supposed to be able to have children, so it came as a shock to us. And that experience for us, or at least for me, was kind of mixed with like this joy, but also this terror of like knowing the world that my daughter would grow up in, and kind of trying to deal with that pull back and forth within myself of being afraid for this new person, but also being overjoyed that I was going to meet this new person. And so this work really is walking through the world, walking through my, 20 to 40 miles from my house. Some pictures were made a little further than that, but by and large, most of these pictures were made very close to where I live. And in some ways trying to build the world that I think she should grow up in or she should be in. And that world is maybe not as typical as some might assume. And it doesn't shy away from reality. But in the same, having this approach and dealing with thinking about my own childhood experiences and potentially the experiences of my child, definitely had an impact on how I was perceiving not just her reality, but my reality. This is my father the first time he met my oldest daughter, Josephine. Making this work was really revelatory for me because before I tended to work as kind of strict journalist, as I would photograph a thing and I was just illustrating the thing that I was photographing. And walking into this project, kind of unknowingly, I started to contend with my own feelings and how I was living in the world that I was living in, and those feelings were growing and growing and growing inside of me. And as I would go out and make pictures, they would come out. And at the time, I didn't realize it. At the time, I didn't realize what I was doing. I was just reacting to my situation. And that reaction apparently had a connective thread that it took me a while to find. And one thing that I will always appreciate about this work and this book, other than this was a very important time in my life, is that it helped me learn about my process of making pictures. Before this work, I thought that to make good work, you had to come up with a great idea and then execute the idea. And for me, I tend to explore and have fewer boundaries and fewer rules when I'm making work. And I don't always know what I'm doing when I'm doing it. And so instead of coming up with a great idea, I started just making a lot of work, and then taking time to actually look at the work and see what the work was telling me. And really what I'm saying is seeing what my subconscious mind was drawn to whenever I was making these pictures. I think that we can often feel trapped because we say no to ourselves before we even get started. We say no to something because we don't think the idea is going to be compelling enough. We say no because we don't think anyone will care. And we don't start. And I think you have to just start. Photography is a process of exploration and editing, lots and lots of editing. And I've made a lot of pictures that didn't go into this book. I photographed this book over a span of almost 3 years. And there are not a ton of photographs in the work because they were supposed to be just the right pictures in the book to create this world, to encapsulate what it felt like to live in this time. And for me, that's more important than just the information offered. It's about remembering when the cicadas came in and that experience of these little creatures feeling like a plague, but really they were just going through a process of change themselves, and how at one point I felt, hatred towards this huge, disgusting plague of animals. It ended up that they were living the same experience that I was, and taking time to reflect allowed me to discover a lot about myself and a lot about what my pictures were doing apart from what I was consciously thinking about. And I think that we have to give ourselves the freedom to take time, look at our work, look at the pictures in a project, and see if there's something more happening there than what we're trying to force upon the pictures. The worst thing that we can do is force an idea onto art. We have to let the art tell us what it is. And in this process, and with this book, I very much feel like this work lives on its own apart from me. That once the book was published, once it literally was birthed and out into the world, it was almost like giving birth to a child that now has its own place apart from me. And it's strange to think about that because this work is really personal. It's my family, it's my wife, it's my daughter, it's the places I live, it's my neighbors, it's my friends. But it's been kind of beautiful to see the book go out into the world and to have an impact in people's lives. And one of my greatest joys and one of my favorite things about Photobooks is that when you choose to buy a book, when you choose to, keep a book, someone gives you a book, then that book kind of lives with you in your home. It lives on your shelf. It lives in your life. I've moved a lot as a kid, and the things that stayed with me are not always the things that I wanted. But now as an adult, whenever I move, I choose what I take with me and what I leave behind. And the thought that somebody would take this book with them when they move to a new house or to a new apartment or to another country, makes me extremely happy, because this is very much a part of me and a part of my life. And not all art is necessarily personal documentary. or a record of someone's experience or feelings, or the record of the time. But this is for me, and more so than I think anything else I've done. And so when people do, choose to keep this in their lives, it does feel, kind of intimate for me. And also, I really do appreciate that people would choose to do that. It, in some ways, combats that huge existential loneliness that I assume most of us have. And you probably notice I'm not explaining each of the pictures because as the maker of the images, I think it doesn't serve the work to overly explain it. And the more I explain it, I think the less interesting it can be for the viewer. But I did just want to show the pictures and show the book. I'm really happy with the book. The printing was lovely. I think it worked out really well. And we made this version of the book and released it during the pandemic. It came out into the world in 2021. So it was supposed to be out in 2020, but for obvious reasons, it didn't make it. And so, another reason why I wanted to share this is that those years I feel like are very lost, and I put out this very important work of mine in that time. And so I thought, maybe now that we're a little bit on the other side, I should share this work again and see if there are people that want to partake in it, that want to be a part of the work and want to receive the work. There's a little statement that I wrote at the end that I think is indicative of what a lot of the work is about, or at least the ethos of the work. And it's a little thing I wrote. My daughter was born on the 13th spring. Her cries were met by the deafening surge of the cicada's song. I wonder if she'll end up marred like me and my father. When the cicadas return, she'll be a teenager and I'll be grayed and worn. My daughter turned 8 a few days ago. So it's strange to think how different our lives are compared to when I wrote that. But they are. They are. So this is the 13th spring. It was published by Fall Line Press, and it was printed at SYL in Barcelona or SIL. The gentleman that runs that operation, his name's Jose, and I got to work with him remotely a lot. Unfortunately, I was not able to go on press with him, but Jose is fantastic. If you're thinking about printing a book, definitely I would say look at SYL in Barcelona. They do a great job, and Jose was extremely helpful along the most extreme circumstances of being completely remote during the pandemic. And I'm very grateful for all of his hard work to make something that I care deeply about look so beautiful. So that's the 13th spring. If you're interested in grabbing a copy, I still have several, and I would love to send one to you. Like I said, they're on sale on my website right now, the month of April 2023. So if you're interested in that, just jump down there and grab a copy. All right, thanks everybody.